Today I'm back with another video. This is something I've also wanted to talk about for quite a long time as well. Really, in this video today, I wanted to talk about why you should learn virtual machines. When I was in high school, I think this was, I don't even know how many years ago now. It was less than 10 years ago, but not like 20 or 30 or something like that. But when I was in high school, I was, kind of under the impression, like when you had a computer, you'd only run like one real operating system on it, right? Whether you have like Windows, Mac, or even Linux. I was under the impression you could only run one operating system and be able to do, one of everything, if that makes sense, with your OS. Now, when I was in high school, I really started getting into coding and, programming and testing out, like, I guess I wanted to really visit like the dark web and stuff like that, do some interesting things, I'll say the least. But anyways, when I was in high school, I was Googling, or not even Googling back then. I was just like kind of searching. I think like just in general, like how can I have like another computer within my computer? Now, keep in mind I was a little younger, and I didn't really know like a whole lot. I mean, I knew a little bit about computers, but not that much then. And I finally discovered how you can do like a virtual machine. I thought it was one of the coolest things ever, in my opinion. Right? You can have this virtual computer inside your computer. I kind of really wanted to talk about that today. And virtual machines are awesome, right? I have this diagram here. It's very simple. I like it. It's a good visual for those who might not understand. Essentially, a virtual machine, you can think of it as like a container or a system within another operating system within your operating system, which is kind of cool because that means you can really segment things, and allows for, if you want to do different things but not have it touch your actual OS, you can do that. Now, I know there's some arguments out there saying, like, there's ways you can hack out of the virtual machine managers of the virtual machine itself, stuff like that, and it can touch your OS. But yeah, I get that. Things can happen. There's vulnerabilities. I know there's one recently where I think it was VirtualBox got owned at, like, I think it was Pwn to Own, like the hacking conference, and they were able to get to the root system of not even just the VM but the actual host system. But virtual machines, if you look at it here, right? You have your physical hardware, right? The PC, like the motherboard, CPU, GPU, stuff like that, RAM, right? And then you have your host operating system, whether that's, Windows, Linux, Mac, Unix, whatever you want to use. And then you have something called a hypervisor. Essentially, it's hypervisor is something that bridges the gap between the actual VM itself and then essentially the host operating system. The hypervisor allows, the VM to run as like its own, I guess you could say, OS within the operating system. It essentially uses the host operating system resources to create these VMs. So it's kind of cool, right? It's like a little, I call it like a little shield, like a visor, a little shield, that allows you to run those virtual machines. That may not be the correct technical explanation of it, but that's how I think of it, and that's how it helps me. But it's really cool because essentially what you do is you kind of use resources and stuff from the host operating system. Now, in this instance, this person has 3 virtual machines, but you can have however many as you like until you run out of resources, really. I've done it before where I've had, Windows 11 VM running to do some testing on some stuff, then obviously like a Linux VM, and then maybe like a OpenBSD VM, right? And I was, almost at my maximum RAM percentage usage. I don't have a super powerful PC. I have something that's nice and gets the job done, right? I like to be minimal, but you can have as many virtual machines as you want at a time, just until you run out of resources. Now, another thing that's interesting is there's different types of virtual machines. I know there's different ways to launch them, like in different types of different vendors. Like there's VirtualBox, VMware. What else? There's KVM or QEMU, I think it's KVM, something like that, right? There's a bunch of different types of VM, virtual machine and virtual machine managers. Now, there's different types of virtual machines. I know this one here is like a host, like OS-based, like hypervisor-based virtual machine, and there's also kernel virtual machines, KVMs, which I alluded to earlier. Now, KVMs are pretty neat. That was another thing I didn't learn about until a couple of years ago, too, when I was doing some more researching. But KVMs are nice because instead of using the host operating system for resources, they go down to the kernel level, which is really cool, and you get a little bit of snappier performance from what I've seen and from what I've heard. But those two are like, I think those are the main 2 ones I know. There might be others, I'm not sure. It's just more of like a general type thing, but virtual machines are really good. When you get into the workforce, you'll start seeing why virtual machines are great. For example, right, if you have a data center and you have a bunch of servers, right? That, each server runs one application or does one thing. Like, let's say we have 5 servers, two of them are like, I guess, network like storage drives for different departments, and then the other 3 are like different tools that your organization uses. Now, the thing here is that what's great is what you could do is just get one big server, right? One a little bit more beefier, a little bit more power that can, get things done, and you can put 5 virtual machines on that, and that's great. It allows for easier maintenance, and you can virtually back up those machines rather than having to do a physical backup, right, of each server one by one. So it just allows for more modularity, and I think it's pretty cool, right? And nowadays too, even in the cloud, a lot of it is like VMs and stuff like that. There is still like physical stuff, but a lot of it is VM based, which is pretty cool. But having the skill of virtual machines is something great to have. Just having this basic understanding, right, of how it works and why it's beneficial to use. I know sometimes when I'm running, like if I need to try out something and it's kind of shady and I'm not really sure, like, hey, I don't want this on my OS, I'll disconnect my network, put a nice like hardened VM on, install that and run something in there and then delete the machine when I'm done. So it can be like a little bit like a throwaway type thing, throwaway device. It's also good for like software development, right? If you want to have, let's say, you're testing out an application and you just want to have like, what happens when the user just freshly clicks on this after installing, right? You don't want to get a response from your machine. You want to see what like a brand new user would see. You can do that too, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's a little bit about virtual machines. Just kind of want to talk about that here. Hopefully you guys found this video interesting and enjoyable. But please, yeah, leave any feedback or any other things I missed below. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.